In the mobile gacha game infamous for its atrocious difficulty, Loki, ranked 5th in the world, loses consciousness while raiding the dungeon. Waking up as Han Islat, a level 1, 1-star hero, he must lead newbie masters and heroes to clear the 100th floor. Join the hard-carrying Master Loki as he refuses to accept defeat in this epic journey back to Earth. Zid suddenly falls down as a message above him states his condition is critical, while Han angrily rushes forward and Jenna shakily wonders if she should pull the blade out as Hansen wearily tries asking Zid to just tag out for him for 30 seconds and Han wildly keeps fighting the goblins. He tells Hansen to take the left passageway while he takes care of this area. Hansen worryingly inquires about Zid, so Han furiously says he's resting because he's tried and orders him to shut up and move as Zid passes away. Han tells Jenna that Zid's already dead and to help him out, so she starts fighting the goblins as well and questions how much longer they've got left. He says he can't look at the time and just orders her to keep killing as they start leveling up and their skills awaken. But he tells her that the awakenings don't mean anything if they die. Hansen starts bleeding and shakily asks Han to save him as a horde of goblins slowly approach him and start attacking. But Han quickly tells Jenna and Aaron to come with him and to mourn Zid and Hansen once they've survived this as Hansen also passes away. Jenna asks if they're going to die here, so he tells her to not say stuff like that and to climb the wall behind them. She asks if he's telling her to run away by herself, to which he hurriedly questions what she's saying and urges her to climb up so that he can follow behind her. The goblins suddenly arrive, so he tells Aaron and Jenna to not use stab since they can't afford killing only one in an attack. Jenna quickly climbs up, so he orders Aaron to follow her, but as he grabs her hand, a goblin suddenly attacks his leg, so Han tells Jenna to not let go of Aaron's hand and furiously stabs it before telling Aaron he's going to cut his leg as well. Aaron screams out in pain and starts bleeding, so Han tells Jenna to get him up and realizes the goblins are stepping over themselves to attack them, so he quickly tells her to use Aaron's spear and just stab anything that comes close to them. He warns her that there's nowhere else to run to if they lose here before she accidentally drops the spear. He tells her to just kick them with her feet before she desperately says there are too many of them and they can't hold out any longer. He desperately tells her to just hold out for 30 seconds and to just trust him once, inwardly remarking that he isn't lying. A goblin suddenly climbs up, so he rushes to kill it, but another one stabs him with a dagger, so he rushes forward in rage, but the goblin swiftly rips the sword out of his torso as Han starts screaming in pain. Han falls down in pain as a message appears stating that he's bleeding and will start losing health at regular intervals as Jenna gets attacked, and the same message appears for her. Facing the army of monsters, Han despairingly admits it's over and questions if he's going to die here, frustratingly acknowledging that this is just the 5th floor and calling it unfair since he doesn't understand why he's struggling so much, and says this would have never happened on Earth, wondering why it had to be him before suddenly opening his eyes in a fit of rage and slashing through a goblin's head. He declares that it isn't over yet because they're only on the 5th floor and says there's no way that he'll die at a place like this before swiftly cutting through a pair of goblins that jump at him. As the goblins' dismembered body parts fall down, he tells the other monsters to bring it on and awakens the berserk skill. He inwardly remarks even breathing is hard. His body is screaming in pain, but Jenna wearily looks at him as he furiously asks the goblins if they want to kill him and tells them to bring it on, declaring that he will not break even if he falls while rushing forward and slashing through a horde of goblins at once. He continues his rampage and keeps wildly killing goblins left, right and center before his sword finally breaks and the goblins keep attacking. But he declares that even if it breaks, he will never stop. He rushes towards the goblins with the broken sword just as the timer hits 0 and the army of monsters suddenly immobilizes. Jenna looks around in shock and a goblin's claws stop just short of Aaron's face as a message appears, stating that they have cleared the stage and have leveled up, labeling Han as the MVP. Another message appears and gifts them 5,000 gold. an iron ore, 3 leather, and 2 planks before congratulating them for successfully clearing the 5th floor and stating that the daily dungeon has now become accessible, telling them to gather materials and strengthen their heroes in the training room. The 3 wearily drop their weapons as Jenna collapses on the floor and Han heavily sighs. Jenna slowly starts crying tears of joy and laughing before asking Han if he can give her a hand since she can't get up because of not having any strength. Han grabs her hand as she asks if they survived, which he confirms and remarks that it seems like they really were able to clear it since the waiting room is going up. She worryingly says it's already so difficult when they're only on the 5th floor, but Han interrupts her and admits there was something different this time and explains it was systemized this time, so even if one of them failed to fulfill their role, they would all die, so they wouldn't have been forced to fight so desperately if he had raised Zid and Hansen a bit more. Picking up his broken sword, he remarks that it won't be that hard to survive if the party is well made, and they were just unlucky that it happened when they were in their weakest state. She slowly says she knows that and looks down. He wearily supports Eren, and they exit the dungeon, seeing which Deeker runs up to them and happily praises them for their work, informing them that Chloe has prepared some delicious food and asking if Zid and Hansen are in there. Han plainly confesses that they died, but he doesn't understand at first, so he confirms that they're dead, shocking him. Usul calls for them, announcing that the master is calling and telling them to come out, so Han slowly walks off with Jenna and Eren, leaving the others speechless. Han wearily flops down on his bed, admitting that he has no intention of being sentimental over someone's death, since death will become an everyday occurrence as long as he's part of the front line climbing up the tower. Thinking back on it, he wonders if he got the berserk skill, remarking that composure and berserk can't exist together, 100% believing it's a bug. Composure, which lets him hold on to his sanity, and berserk, which lets go of his sanity in exchange for increased power. It's probably related to how he's both a master and a hero. He admits he doesn't know yet, but doesn't want to think about it either, at least for today. He decides to just rest for today since things will get a whole lot busier starting tomorrow. The next day, Jenna's fervently training as Han says she's always later than him because she sleeps late and asks if something happened. She energetically says she doesn't want to die and seeing her. Han remarks that she has gained some skills during the combat yesterday. On top of that, she has talent and puts in effort, while Eren, on the other hand, went through all that trouble but wasn't able to gain a single skill. Han gets down to exercising and says his growth is limited to 5, which is a growth value that one would expect from a 3-star, since he'll reach level 10 soon, which is the max level for a 1-star. He should prepare to aim for an advancement to 2-star. He suddenly stops and asks Jenna what she's doing as she's patting his abs. She remarks that it looks tasty, so he tells her to move her hand and puts on his shirt as he pouts and says it's not like it'll dull or anything, to which he says it will, and inwardly admits that the more he sees her, the less he can believe her, wondering how she can act shamelessly like this after going through all that happened yesterday. Jenna looks around and says it doesn't look like Eren's coming, so he tells her to leave him be because he's probably holed up in his room since he was close with the trio. She thinks about it and says normally it would be fine for him to wake up early and train, to which Han says it was the same for Dika, and that those two were passionate about training, unlike the other guys who do it half-heartedly. He annoyingly looks over at the others practicing with dummies and remarks that those guys are too busy trying to avoid getting synthesized, so they only swing like they mean it when Master logs in. He adds that Zid and Hansen also had potential and would have been very useful if he nurtured them a little, so the 2 that died yesterday should have been one of these guys instead of them. Jenna nervously says they should just continue their training before Eren arrives and apologizes for being late. Looking at him, Han questions if he's a sinner and why his expressions like that, so he answers that those 2 might be alive right now if he was a bit stronger, but Han says they died because they were weak and says that's all there is to it, inwardly noting that it's already been a month since he came to this world, which means it's probably just over 10 days in Earth time. He remarks that he was able to figure out Wadever's log in patterns during that time with his observations. The time dilation between the waiting room and the Earth is about a factor of 3 since Wadever logged in 3 times per day, in the morning, afternoon, and night. For reference, the time during combat in the stages flowed at real-time speed, so if they had the 3 times difference as well, it would have been an hour and a half instead of 30 minutes, meaning they would have been completely annihilated without a double. Usul suddenly appears and tells everyone to be like their excellent Han, succeeding in a survival mission on the 5th floor using only trash, as expected of the Master of Masters. Jenna sneakily asks Han why she's suddenly acting like that, so he lamely answers that it's a trade secret. Usul suddenly whirls on the other guys and warns them that she won't let them go if they're lying around and sleeping in their residences while she's suffering like this, but Han tells her to leave them be since they come out whenever she calls them anyway. Party 4 gets created with Han, Jenna, Louis, Jeffrey, and Owen. Usul announces that these 5 will go into the space-time rift. Surprised, Jenna says she hasn't even seen them, but Han tells her to not worry since it won't be as difficult this time. They head to the door to the daily dungeon where a man asks Han if they're with him, so he asks for his name. The man introduces himself as Owen and worryingly remarks that he doesn't think they'll be of enough help with him around, so Han tells him to not worry since they won't be fighting. They enter the daily dungeon Kendit Forest and Jenna wonders where the enemies are and stops Han from pulling her cheeks. He tells her that this is just a daily dungeon where they're supposed to collect materials so they can think of it as a shopping basket. They start collecting items, but Han tells Jenna to come with him so that they can hunt. While she butchers the deer, he goes off on his own and finds Queen of the Forest, a rare monster that appears on the days of the forest dungeon, and the low-grade attribute stone it has is used as a material for advancement. He rushes forward and swiftly kills the other deer before facing it and telling it to come at him since all her boyfriends are dead. The other guys realize there's a monster near them in shock, but another one corrects him and realizes it's Han, who slowly walks towards them with the head of the Queen of the Forest. Jenna asks how a deer can be this big, so Han tells her to help him out since he's tired as hell before she says she's caught 2 deer and a boar. She recognizes that it's a female despite having a horn, which he's surprised to hear, and sees that she suddenly goes through another awakening, remarking that her advancement seems to be going smoothly. They later cook the meat and Jenna happily says they look very excited before he tells her to come with him if she's done eating. Daily Dungeon is a system where the location of the dungeon changes depending on the day of the week, and today was Sinmeral Plateau, a dungeon where you can acquire other attribute stones. They arrive at the Sinmeral Plateau where Jenna asks if she can really get stronger if they gather materials, so he says she needs to gather objects named attribute stones if she wants to get stronger, so they're here to get them. Jenna looks at the view and remarks that it looks really nice as Han notices a plant of life and thinks he's only seen them in a drawing and says they're the main ingredients for making recovery potions, deciding to pick them up later. They swiftly defeat a gigantic wolf, after which Jenna happily says they aren't having any trouble defeating a wolf, and Han tells her to hurry up since they don't know if the others will smell its blood, so she quickly gets down to cleaning it and asks what they should do with its claws and fangs, to which he tells her to tear them off and keep them separate, examining a low-grade wind attribute stone. Jenna slowly says it's peaceful here, so he tells her to say that after wiping the blood off herself, but she adds that she wishes it could always be like this, hunting and gathering plants, having food and a place to sleep. She suddenly says it would be paradise if the master wasn't here, hearing which Han becomes flustered since he's the former master. She says she wishes the master would never come, hearing which Han inwardly wonders if the guys in Niflheim also thought like that, remarking that it would be better if the master didn't come. He asks if she doesn't want to fight and says fighting on the front line isn't everything since she doesn't even need to worry about being synthesized. Jenna asks if he's going to give her another place and says there's nothing she can't do if the situation gets better, before asking why he isn't going to the other roles, hearing which he starts laughing. A few days later, the party teleports at an unknown location. being joined by Dika this time, who says he looks forward to working with them, and Eren remarks that this doesn't look like a daily dungeon, so Han says it's a search quest which rarely appears. Eren asks him if this is the same as the 5th floor, but Han tells them to not raise their voice and stay low, remarking it seems like it's clear, so they'll finish this successfully if they just fulfill the conditions. They notice 3 goblins with a blowhorn, meaning they've got allies as backup, so Jenna says there's a goblin village with around 100 of them, to which he says it seems like a trap, and they'll be ambushed if they rush in without proper recon. He tells Jenna to shoot down a goblin and orders Eren to take one down with a spear before instructing Dika to support them and stay on guard, so the two kill the goblins and Han beheads the final one, remarking that he can't let it call for reinforcement as it rushes to inform its allies. They clear the stage and are rewarded with 5,000 gold as Dika asks if it's over, but Han says they aren't done yet and decides to go investigate a bit, inwardly remarking that a hint for the next stage is going to be given, so there's no way it'll be a single quest since it requires them to explore, and although it's formed randomly, it's not like he can't predict anything. He looks at the goblin village and wonders if it's a large goblin habitat before one notices something from the gap in the barrier, but Han's already disappeared. They return to the dungeon where Jenna asks why he ran off by himself, so he explains that he wanted to look around the area, thinking that there are quite a few cases where hints are given in the main dungeon. The chain quests that start from an exploration are called streams, and understanding a stream is also a skill masters need. He frustratingly adds that he doesn't know if what he saw was conveyed properly for Waitiver, and it shouldn't be time for a stream to appear yet before Chloe worryingly tells him there's trouble since some weird people have come here. He says this isn't the first time weird people have come here, but she says these ones are a little different since they're carrying weapons and their atmosphere is weird as well. Hearing this, he says premium hero summoning is finally here as a connection to the group Maned Wolf Mercenaries is formed. Han calls for Usul and asks her if the master spent money, which she agrees to, and reveals that he bought the newbie portent package that's worth $50. He says that makes it 2,500 gems and 50,000 gold, and remarks that these guys were brought here through premium summons. If it was him, he would have pulled for them before the 5th round and put them in a party. He tells Chloe to return to the kitchen and assures her that they won't eat her up, and since they're just unusual, before dismissing the party. Jenna energetically greets a woman who introduces herself as Edith Callan before Jenna introduces Han to her by saying he's a bit blunt is kind-hearted, so he tells her to shut up and inwardly remarks that she's a 3rd star who came with a class and is a thief type with low strength and vitality but high dexterity, who uses her short swords more than her bow. As they sit down, Edith is surprised to see that Han knows about this place and says she only knows she was summoned here to fight, but her head hurts if she tries to remember more than that. She reveals she was part of the wolf-maned mercenaries and worked in Halcyon, but woke up here. She and her teammates suddenly gets called by Usul, and one of them wildly leaves Chloe's bar, declaring that he can't wait to meet the guy who got all this meat. He heads to the town square where the maned wolf party is formed, and the other guys complain to Han about how something about them feels off, but he asks if they expect him to protect them and reminds them of how they used to take training so lightly and didn't even bother learning skills from Chloe or the artisans, angrily telling them to get lost before he gets angry.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.